Most guitar players practice scales the wrong way. Memorizing shapes and patterns is fine, but that is not the same thing as learning real, usable musical language. If your main goal is to develop technical skill, there's nothing wrong with running up and down a scale pattern so that your hands can get familiar with the tactile aspect of how that scale feels on the fretboard. But scale practice should be more than just finger mechanics. Developing physical proficiency is important, but if you want to create memorable and emotionally powerful melodies, then you need to practice scales in a way that reflects what actually happens when you play real music. So in today's lesson, I'm going to show you the difference between practicing a scale as an exercise versus practicing a scale as real melodic vocabulary. So let's get right into it. Welcome back to the channel, everyone. I'm Nate Comp from DYMECAST, and today's video is episode number 8 in our series that focuses on creating expressive guitar melodies using the power of emotional contrast. As a developing guitar player, one of the toughest pills to swallow is the fact that scale knowledge does not automatically translate into great melodic phrasing. Knowing the notes is one thing, but turning a scale into an expressive melody requires harmonic context, rhythmic context, melodic intent, and confident delivery. Now, before I get into the specifics of building a good scale practice routine, let's start with this. Years ago, I read this great quote from composer Aaron Copland, where he said the following: "Why a good melody has the power to move us has thus far defied all analysis. We cannot even say with any degree of surety what constitutes a good melody. Though we may not be able to define what a good melody is in advance, we can certainly make some generalizations about melodies that we already know to be good, and that may help to make clearer the characteristics of good melodic writing." Well, after 4 decades of playing, I've collected dozens of important observations about melodic behavior that have been extremely helpful in my own pursuit of turning scales into actual music. And here is the first one. Not every scale note is created equal. Every scale has a built-in hierarchy of emotions, and each scale note exists within an emotional spectrum of consonance and dissonance. This is the musical principle of tonal hierarchy, which is something that I covered in episode 3 of this series. So if this concept is something new to you, definitely check out that episode. The basic idea here is that every scale contains a unique collection of resolution notes and tension notes, where the consonant notes of the scale are used to create a feeling of melodic arrival, while the dissonant notes of the scale are used to create more of a feeling of melodic motion. The observation that not every scale note is created equal could also be described in this way. Every scale that you will ever learn can be viewed as the notes of a triad plus some amount of tension notes. When it comes to developing a solid scale practice routine, the first thing that you need to do is to practice your scales in a harmonic context. When you play up and down the notes of a scale in isolation, the notes just sound like notes, but the moment that you begin to play that scale over a chord, every note starts to mean something. Practicing a scale in a harmonic environment is how you train your ears and your emotions to internalize the tonal hierarchy that is built into that scale. I like to practice all of my scales using a freeze pedal. This allows me to instantly set up a static harmony environment to practice playing over. For example, let's say I wanted to practice the sound of an A minor scale. Okay, I'll use the freeze pedal to set up the sound of an A minor chord, and then I can either play linear or position or diagonally over this harmonic context. So here's A minor as a linear scale: A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and A. Okay, I could also do this by position: A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and A. Playing a scale over a drone chord allows me to immediately identify the tension and resolution notes that exist within that scale. And that brings me to the second important observation about melodic behavior. Expressive and memorable melodies intentionally balance the contrasting emotions of tension and resolution. The feeling of arrival versus the feeling of movement is what compels us to keep listening. And I like to think of it this way. Everyone has heard of Albert Einstein's famous equation of E equals mc squared. Well, the most important equation to know when you are a musician is dissonance equals emotion. Okay, part of your scale practice routine should be dedicated to training your ear to recognize the tension and resolution notes within a scale, because developing that skill ties in directly to the third important observation about melodic behavior. Every dissonant scale tone has a desire to resolve to a consonant scale tone. I often refer to the dissonant notes in a scale as tendency tones because they have this built-in tendency to want to resolve to consonants. And all things being equal, the most musically satisfying way to resolve a dissonance is to use stepwise pitch motion to arrive at a consonance. I like to call this the path of least resistance or direct resolution, which is just a fancy way of saying resolve a dissonant note to the nearest available consonant note. In a conversation that I had with my dear friend Rocco DeRosa, he summarized this perfectly as, "You are never more than 2 frets away from a quality note." And I really like that description. You need to practice every possible type of direct resolution that exists within a scale. And this is done by applying the concept of controlled dissonance. You should practice resolving every dissonant scale tone to the closest available consonant scale tone. And most importantly, you should do this in a harmonic context. Practicing controlled dissonance will help you to get comfortable with the sound and the feeling of rising tone resolution as well as falling tone resolution. Okay, if I go back to practicing an A minor scale over an A minor drone chord, okay? Here's what practicing controlled dissonance would sound like, okay? So here's my A minor chord. I'm gonna start at the top of a linear A minor scale and do controlled dissonance, okay? So I'm gonna start with a falling tone B to A, a rising tone G to A, falling tone F to E, rising tone D to E, falling tone D to C, rising tone B to C, falling tone B to A, and then finally rising tone G to A. Now you could also do this in position, right? Falling tone B to A, rising tone G to A, falling tone F to E, rising tone D to E, falling tone D to C, rising tone B to C, falling tone B to A, and then finally rising tone G to A. The fourth important observation about melodic behavior is where things really start to come together. The physical delivery of a melodic phrase is just as important as the notes and the rhythms. So you need to be very intentional when it comes to applying expressive stylistic techniques to everything that you play. The purposeful use of articulations and inflections is what transforms these little pieces of melodic vocabulary into real usable musical language. So you really have to focus on delivering each phrase with good melodic pronunciation. If I go back to practicing a position group of direct resolutions over A minor again, but I really focus on expressive techniques, that changes everything, okay? So here's my A minor chord, okay? When I did a direct resolution of B to A as a falling tone, what if I slide, pull off, and vibrato? Well, now it's much more interesting. How about the rising tone of G to A? What if I turn that into a bend with vibrato? Or the falling tone of F to E? What if that's a pre-bend and release? Okay, so for every one of the controlled dissonance moves that we did, go back and repeat that, but try to incorporate as many techniques as possible to really be expressive. And this is going to be more than just an exercise now. It's more of a melodic phrasing and a melodic delivery idea. If you want some great inspiration, listen to what David Gilmour plays at the beginning of the Pink Floyd tune, Shine On You Crazy Diamond. He's playing over a static G minor chord, but he's doing all this really great expressive phrasing built around tension and resolution, but most importantly, melodic pronunciation. The fifth important observation about melodic behavior was a real game changer for me. Variations in melodic rhythm can dramatically change how you experience the emotions of tension and resolution. A dissonant scale tone can be made to feel more dissonant or less dissonant depending on the rhythmic location and the rhythmic duration of that note. And a consonant scale tone can be made to feel more consonant or less consonant depending on the rhythmic placement and the rhythmic value of that note. Now, I've already mentioned the importance of practicing scales in a harmonic context, but a solid practice routine also needs to include a rhythmic context. Practicing controlled dissonance in both a harmonic and rhythmic environment, that's how you begin to develop a strong melodic vocabulary. And for me personally, this is where I discovered some of my favorite melodic devices. So let's go over 3 of them. The first piece of melodic vocabulary to practice is approach notes. The basic definition of an approach note is a tension note that is placed on a weak beat, followed by stepwise resolution to a consonant note on a strong beat. So here's an example of what practicing approach notes over A minor would sound like using a single string A minor scale. Another definition of an approach note is a tension note that is placed on an offbeat, followed by stepwise resolution into a consonant note on a strong beat. So here's an example of practicing approach notes over A minor using a position fingering of the A minor scale. The really cool thing about practicing approach notes is that you can do this with any type of scale. Remember my observation that every scale can be viewed as the notes of a triad plus some amount of tension notes? Well, here is an example of practicing approach notes over an A minor chord, but this time I'm going to use a single string version of the A Dorian mode. For contrast, here's an example of practicing approach notes over an A minor chord using a position fingering of the A harmonic minor scale. The second piece of melodic vocabulary to practice is anticipations. A basic definition of an anticipation is a tension note that is placed on a weak beat, followed by stepwise resolution to a consonant note on an offbeat. I like to think of anticipation as an approach note that's in a hurry, or an impatient approach note. Instead of waiting for the arrival of the strong beat, the melodic resolution actually comes rhythmically early, ahead of the beat, which is where the name anticipation comes from. Anticipations create forward motion, and it makes a phrase feel a little more alive, and it gives the listener the sense that the melody is kind of thinking ahead. All right? So here's an example of practicing anticipations over A minor using that single string A minor scale. For something a little more exotic sounding, here's an example of practicing anticipations over an A minor chord using a position fingering of the A Phrygian mode. Before I move on, I was surprised to find out that over 90% of you who watch our videos are actually not subscribed to this channel. So if you are enjoying this lesson so far and you want to see more content like this, please hit that subscribe button. It really does make a difference. The third piece of melodic vocabulary to practice is probably my favorite one, which is appoggiatura. A basic definition of an appoggiatura is a tension note that is placed on a strong beat, followed by stepwise resolution to a consonant note on an offbeat. Now, playing a dissonant note on a strong beat is going to draw a lot of attention to that note, but that feeling is exactly what you are going for when you practice this kind of melodic device. So many of my favorite melodies are based around the sound of appoggiatura, like when I hear Jeff Beck play something like this, or if I hear Paul McCartney sing a melody that goes, all my troubles seem so far away. Okay, that move right there over that D minor chord, that's the power of appoggiatura. Appoggiaturas are often used to create a sense of longing, and it's a beautiful way to add some emotional pull into a melody. So here's an example of practicing appoggiaturas over an A minor chord using a single string A minor scale. Another definition of an appoggiatura is a tension note that is placed on a strong beat, followed by stepwise resolution to a consonant note on a weak beat. So here is an example of practicing appoggiaturas over an A minor chord using a position fingering of the A melodic minor scale. Anytime you learn a new scale, ask yourself, how well can I phrase it? Can I make it feel connected to the harmony? Can I move it through time rhythmically? And can I make it feel musical? Practicing scales should train your hands and your ears and your time feel and your musical imagination all at once. So here's how to organize all of this stuff into an actionable practice plan. Learn a basic scale shape. Identify the consonant notes inside of the scale and identify the dissonant notes inside of the scale. Practice playing every type of direct resolution within that scale over a static drone chord. Then put all of those direct resolutions into a rhythmic environment and practice them as approach notes, anticipations, and appoggiaturas. Make sure to incorporate expressive stylistic techniques into each example and use a variety of articulations and inflections to change the physical delivery and the melodic pronunciation of each phrase. If you follow this routine consistently, your scale practice will go beyond finger mechanics and actually start to sound like real music. If you have any questions or comments about today's lesson, leave them below. We would love to hear from you. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.